GoToMeeting, but it's through Monroe, so I don't really like to use it just because
Sure.
it's my, my real job, my extra fun jobs.
Okay. And I'm getting a message from Judy Cook that she's swamped right now. No problem. That's the value of recording this, that Melissa and her, I can update them, and it may just be you and I. So we'll give, like, it's almost 12, so give her a couple of minutes. I'm going to turn this on mute for a second, so I'll be right back, okay?
Mhm.
So let's see. I thought I saw a message from Melissa. Let me check that real quick. I forgot about Music Day. Oh, that's from Judy. Okay. Then Annette, unless Melissa just jumps on, let's go ahead and proceed.
Okay. Are you able to, I don't know if you have it on yours where you're able to hand over the, so I can share. Oh, you know what? I might be able to share my, oh, you have to enable me to share my screen.
Okay, and Greg's on standby helping us out just for that purpose. Greg, did you hear that?
Yeah, hold on.
Thank you. He hasn't done this in a while. We've been getting in person.
Yeah, we had our first in-person meeting in over 1.5 years last month. Interesting.
Yeah, it was. We've had 2 already with the DDA because we had a makeup meeting. And, well, actually, I had to turn it into a workshop because it wasn't technically a meeting because we didn't have a quorum. And then we had our actual meeting for July.
Try it now
And
and
he said, go ahead and try it now and then.
oh, Jesus.
What happened? Spider.
Spray. Spray. Big black.
Huh. All right. Share your desktop. Yeah, it's not letting me share for some reason.
It's not letting her share for some
It
reason.
brings up the block, but when I go to hit share, it doesn't allow me to share. It only allows me to cancel.
Okay. Greg's
Yeah,
looking right
try
now.
this way.
Yeah.
It'll
spider mishap there, but we're all good now.
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead and try now.
Okay, you should be able to see my screen.
Sweet.
And what is going on? Let me try something different here.
Okay.
Wow, this is so weird.
I see something.
Do you see anything? I'm just seeing my blank screen.
It was up and then it disappeared.
Was it my screen like with a big water drop on it, or was it a file?
The water drop was what we saw initially. Then the file came, and then now we see a blank screen.
Okay. Share. Up. You see it now?
No, we see a blank screen.
All right, so I have on my screen now, it's a spreadsheet.
Okay,
Do you see that?
I do not. I see something now. It's trying to. There it goes. We got it.
Okay. Woo! Success. Okay. So this is what I was talking about putting together for this project, so that there would be a workflow, and you know your decision points that you have to make. And then I started the idea of doing it on my own, but I really thought that it would probably be a better use of time just to go through it together and construct it together rather than me just doing it, because I don't know the kind of the idiosyncrasies of how work is done there versus in any other community. So I didn't want to put together a plan that wasn't achievable or doable, because I didn't know what needed to, what steps needed to be taken on your end.
Okay.
So with that, I can fill this in, and I also shared this with you. So I can fill it in now as we're working, which is what the idea was when I wanted to share this. So as we're talking, I can alter the document.
Okay.
This should be a workflow that outlines all the steps that you're going to, we'll have to take in order to move this project, which I'm calling the streetscape, for lack of a better term, but this is the process that will follow as this project is underway.
Okay.
And so we start out with a design phase. And so usually what happens is you really define the scope of the work that you want to accomplish. And I know we talked a little bit about that, but I want to dig into that in a little bit more detail.
Okay.
And then decide what can be done without professional services. So for example, I know you mentioned banners. even though it's part of a larger project, and if we're not going to need design services to do banners, then we don't have to contract for that. We put it under procurement of purchase banners.
Okay. Which we've just decided on a banner, and we have our example, and we're bringing on the meeting on the 11th. So that falls right in line with what the design committee is now doing.
Okay, all right. So ultimately, I'll have a little checkbox column. So as things are done, we can check the box or list the date. Do you prefer just to check that it's done, or do you want to list a date?
No, we can just check that's done.
Okay, so I'm going to insert.
And let me grab something real quick. But you hold on one second. Okay, I'm back.
All right, so we're just going to put a symbol. I'm not that expert of a user with this Google Docs, so I thought you could insert insert. I'll find it. We'll just put a little checkbox in there so that as it's done, we'll just, so you selected the banner, we'll just, check the box.
Okay.
Okay. So once that's done and we can decide what professional services are required, for example, you're going to have to do, like we talked about, a set of instructions for contractors to bid the work.
Yes.
Those we would call project specs. If you want a visual representation of that, it will be called a conceptual plan. So that'll be like a pretty picture. The project specs are basically it's blueprints that are instructions to contractors so that they know what they're bidding.
Okay.
So that everybody has the same information. So if you're getting 3 bids from contractors, you're going to give them this package of information and they're going to be able to respond to it.
Okay.
But what I'm getting at is that the consulting firm you select, you really want to go with a consultant who has, I wouldn't go to the extreme of getting a consulting firm on here that is basically does everything. If you only need, for example, civil engineering. If you only need civil engineering, then we'll seek out a civil engineer. If you want something that's a little bit more robust as far as the services go, that maybe would do a little bit of landscape architecture as well. They're really 2 skill sets. So civil engineers tend to look at things like, this is a slab of concrete and it needs to be this thick and we're using this material and we're going to test it in this way, versus a landscape architect, which will be like, oh, there's the colors we want to use in these beautiful plants and these flowers or whatever. So if it seems like all you're going to end up doing is like a sidewalk replacement, you're probably better off just going with that civil engineer. So we can talk a little bit more about that once the scope of work is finalized.
Okay.
And then when you hire that consulting firm to do that work, that specific work for you, they're probably going to want to go and do some field survey work. Usually, they'll either take a map out, or they'll try to get previous construction drawings from the village so that they have some source material to work with. But you might not want to replace, all of your sidewalk. You might want to replace only flags of sidewalk that are in deteriorated state. So again, that's probably more in the scope of work, but this designer or whichever consulting firm you use, they're going to want to do like a day of survey work, where not a survey per se, but field survey. So they're going to go out there with notes and mark things down, and maybe mark them with some spray paint or whatnot, so that they know exactly what work has to be done there. So once they have that conceptual plan, so usually what's done is they'll do the conceptual plan first, and once there's some buy-in, then they'll do the project specs after that. I don't know what layers of approval you need. Usually with the DDA, you're going to need a cost estimate if the DDA is going to pay for it. So they're going to say, hey, to do this plan, we're ballparking and it's going to cost you $100,000. And so what I typically like to do is make sure that the DDA sets aside a specific amount of budgetary resources, so that you're not over or under designing, meaning that if the DDA feels comfortable with X number of dollars, then we're going to include as much as we can in the design, but not go over that amount. Likewise, if you say we only have 20, but we really want to do these extra little things and it's going to require 50,000, for example, I'm going to want you guys to decide that ahead of time before we get too deep in the woods here. So those are just some considerations that you're going to have to look into. So the cost estimate's really important before you bid out the work, because you don't want to be thinking that, well, our budget for this was 50, but we bid a package out that's going to cost 150, and then we're just going to end up rejecting all the bids anyway. Okay. So it's better to kind of know what you're getting into ahead of time before you do your bid set. Okay. Again, I don't know if your village council needs to approve. Most of the projects I'm dealing with, although the DDA is, the kind of the spearhead organization that is handling the details, but the village, because it's on public property, normally they have to approve.
Correct.
So if that's the case, we have to build that into the schedule. And then since you're on a state road, it's M52, MDOT may have to require some level of review. And if sometimes the State Historic Preservation Office also wants to take a look at designs, because you're also in a historic area. And even though it's not designated historic, it's probably eligible, and that's going to be their trigger. So just be aware that you're going to build some time into your schedule to have these layers of review. Okay. MDOT may decline if you're just doing simple one-for-one replacement of sidewalk flags. So if we're saying we have concrete and we're just replacing it with concrete, no special treatments, no special colors, no brick pavers, whatever, they may not need to have, a detailed layer of review, but we still need to invite them into that conversation. Okay. Once your project specs are done and your approvals, then you could put that out to bid. Typically, there's a number of mechanisms to promote the fact that you have this bid package out. Some cities participate in MITN, which is mitten, and don't ask me what MITN stands for. I think the last part is network. Okay. But it's a bidding, lack of a better term, promotion site. But there's also places like CAM, Construction Association of Michigan. I think Dodge Reports is another one. There may be a third one, but they also help you advertise your bids. You can also seek out, if you're seeking something more local, you can seek that out as well. So if you know there's a cement contractor or a general contractor nearby to do that, we can also send them direct send the bid package. Once your bids are in, then you're going to have to send it back, review. So I'll add all these steps in here, but then you have usually the consulting firm that you hire will review your bids and review the contractors. So there is a process that they call QBS, which is quality-based standards. You can use that as well. So you're not just using price as your only determining factor. So a lot of times in the past, you'd put a bid package out, you'd get 3 bids in, and you'd go with the low bidder unless you found a reason to disqualify the lowest bidder, in which case you could move up. Now, another way of doing it is called QBS, quality-based standards, where the factors that you make a selection of your contractor isn't just price. So you're going to look at previous work. You're going to, there's a number of different factors in all of that, but that could be an option that you choose through your bid process. That's something you have to identify when we're working, putting together that final bid package, because that's going to impact the language that you use in it. Once your bids are selected, you have a recommendation. It's going to go back to your DDA for approval. So your board then has to approve that contractor. And once that's done, then the process is pretty, it depends on how complicated your project is, but I always recommend as well, trying to inform the business and property owners what's happening, keeping them apprised. If you're doing a little bit more elaborate streetscaping rather than just basic replacement, then we have some opportunity to do some, Facebook kind of promotions where you're actually showing the community where the dollars are being spent and how the improvements will impact the downtown in a positive way.
Okay.
Now for your alley part, the pedestrian connector under that building.
Yeah.
That's almost a different, to me, after thinking about it for a while, I'm almost thinking that that's a separate project.
Yeah, me too.
Because you may only do things like lighting and benches and maybe some public art or something under there, which isn't really gonna, you probably could use some assistance with picking out the right electrical, the lighting that might go in there, or, a public art project is a completely different skill set than what most of these consulting firms will do. So,
all right. Do we add that under the banners then?
Yeah, so that goes back to defining the scope of work and deciding what can be done without the professional services. So some of these things we might say, hey, if there's somebody on the board that wants to help facilitate that kind of project, then that's great. I can do those things too. When it comes to doing public art, if there's murals, maybe there's muralists nearby. I don't know what ideas you have there yet, but
yeah.
Because we go back to define the scope of work, right? But those are just some things to consider.
Okay,
So
and that follows the same logic. Originally there were so many different projects, then we started including things, but the alley logically makes sense to keep separate. We also have some non-board member, and this might be part of the whole Main Street volunteer buy-in, is when we include these outside board members in the community. This could be a very visual, feel-good project for Stockbridge. So I know I've had multiple people reach out that are interested in doing the alley for actually a number of years. So I hope all that made sense. That's definitely something that we would, other than lighting or something, you're right, we keep separate.
Right, yeah. Now, if you have within the talent within the community, if you have, people who have some design related experience, whether they're planners or architects or gardeners or, anything that, is that outside visual representation, and you can get them to contribute their knowledge, skills, and abilities on this committee, you're going to get a better product for the community, I think. Because they'll, you know, a consultant too, keep in mind, they're going to come in and they don't know necessarily your community very well. They don't know the preferences or what people like. They don't know the history per se. They may not
Right.
know that, you know, 50 years ago, somebody did this project and it has this kind of, you know, lasting quality to it that people want to have, or it's something that, you know, we can't get rid of. So it's really important to have that personal connected experience when you're working on these things too. So
Okay. So, and that actually came up already, Annette, because originally Molly wanted to find out if the person that did it prior could do it again. And with that, we didn't want to offend anyone that original art was going to go away. So we've kind of taken that step as to address all those issues up front. And then, of course, we recognize that Stockbridge has its own unique history and we want to include that somehow in this project. So I think that piece we explored a little bit already. Yep.
Okay. All right. So if this sounds like a logical plan to you, I mean, it's going to change. So that's why I shared it with you.
Sure.
Because as we're moving along in these plans, we'll probably add more sheets that describe the scope of work. We can add more steps in here and mark things off. So we're keeping track of keeping the project pacing moving along and recognizing that you're going to have different, although, you know, it's nice to think that, hey, we'd like to be able to do this project this fall. You're going to come to realize that it's probably a spring, you know, 2022 project to work on.
Absolutely.
And if it's not in your, I hate to say it this way, because we have to definitely make sure that your development plan allows this to happen.
Yes.
And, you know, I mentioned this to Daryl, not that I'm trying to step on Daryl's toes at all, but you guys do an awful lot of plan amendments that if you had one updated plan, you wouldn't have to have all of these plan updates to do your individual projects. So if there's room in your abilities, you know, over the next few months to kind of holistically take a look at that development plan and make sure all the projects that you want to do in the next couple years are listed. And then make sure that the board stays focused on those projects. That will reduce the amount of plan amendments that you will have to make. And I want to share this with you because I want you to understand that I've worked on many different plans, and I've only done a handful of plan amendments in 25 years of doing the work. So I just want you to be ready so that we're not having to update that plan all the time like you guys do now. If we take a step back and make sure that you're doing some strategic kind of planning, you could maybe do your plan, you know, make sure that the projects are listed in the development plan and kind of be more proactive about it. I guess that's what I'm getting at.
Can I interject now?
Sure.
So, and I've heard you say this before, Annette, and now that I'm stepping into the role of the chair, I would like to try to execute this. I'm still learning exactly what all that means. So I know you've talked about that. I'd rather do a more consolidated plan moving forward. So it leads me to the question of, because I believe that our plan amendment is done by our attorney. Is that a normal thing for a DDA?
You know, it depends. In some instances, your development plan, in my experience, I'll just give you my experience, is that the development plan is usually prepared by an urban planning firm, maybe in conjunction with an attorney so that the language is correct and it satisfies the, you know, the act which allows the DDAs to exist. So we want to comply with Act 57. And in Act 57, there's a series of, if you're going to have a development plan, this is what needs to be in it. And some of it does require specific legal language. But one of the things that's listed as required in the development plan is a project list. I'm going to use I just did a plan amendment because we did boundary revision for the DDA in Monroe. And at the same time, we did, I took our strategic plan, I took our master plan, pulled out the projects and just gave them a ballpark estimate. So we want to do a bridge lighting project or on a river walk. So we put in river walk enhancements. It's non-specific and there's a dollar amount listed in there. And so when it got to the city council level, the city council said, we don't think your development plan allows you any flexibility. So we're going to give you, we're going to add a line item in there that says, you know, I can't remember the exact terminology we used, but I mean, it was, and this was upon the suggestion of the urban planner that was on that city council, was give yourself some flexibility in spending the money so that you don't have to keep coming back to us every time every time you want to do a project. So you can list admin, for example, and say, over the next X number of years, we think we're going to spend X number of dollars on admin. And admin can be staffing, it can be office, it can be telephone bills, it can be anything that would have to do with overhead. And then if you say we're going to do marketing, and marketing can be paid advertisements, or it can be your website, or it could be the new banners that you're buying. You just have to list in there like the types of activities that you're going to fund with a dollar amount that you're not going to exceed over that period of time. So if it comes down to, hey, we have 10 more years on our plan, and we said in our plan we're going to spend, you know, $10,000 a year on marketing times that 10 years, so that's $100,000. And you find that in year 9, you're, oh my gosh, we went over $100,000, you know, $100,000 mark. We need to revise this, and you know, we're going to go another $5,000. That way, you're not having to do a plan amendment every single time you want to spend, you know, $200. They don't need to be so project specific that they list like, I'm joining the Michigan Downtown Association for $200 this year. And if that is listed specifically in your plan, then your plan is too detailed.
Okay. And I recognize that right away. So let me jump in, because I wrote down who, what, why, how, and where. So I know the why. How do we get an urban plan firm? Can we afford that?
You don't necessarily have to do that. Usually when you're forming your DDA, there is a plan prepared, because when you're using tax increment financing, you're usually using it to make some kind of improvement, whether it's a physical improvement or a programmatic improvement. So
Yes.
Physical improvements could be, you know, streetscapes, it could be public spaces, it could be facade programs, it could be building improvements, all of those types of things. Where programmatic might be, we're going to spend money on events, we're going to spend money on marketing.
So you're thinking we already have that in place? I mean, you had mentioned it as far as, pardon?
Well, what I think you might do is kind of like just take a step back and take a breather and review your whole development plan and what's in it.
Yes.
And then you can decide if you want to make changes that are going to require you to bring in like a master plan that's downtown specific
Yes.
would require you to get an urban planning firm in. And a master plan for the size of downtown you have, I'm going to suggest it would probably be maybe the $50,000 to $60,000 range, maybe a little bit less depending upon how much public engagement you have or how much improvements you really need to make. Those kind of plans usually address, parking if you want it to. They address infrastructure. They address the public engagement in the downtown.
Okay.
So it's a lot of different pieces. It's just how you want it to happen. Another type of document that you might want to look at, and I think this is where you'll be able to, if you don't need the whole master plan, or you don't feel like you're capable, the capabilities right now of securing the professional assistance to do that, you might just get a facilitator to come in and help you do a strategic plan that's going to outline what you're going to do over the next, 3 to 5 years, project wise.
Okay.
So you can say, hey, our citywide, and you can use the citywide master plan for detail as well, and not have to make it so focused specifically on downtown, because there are going to be strategies in your village master plan that impacts downtown. So if they're already listed in there, you could say, all right, well, out of these 10 potential projects that are listed in the downtown or citywide or village-wide master plan, we'd like to pursue these 4 in the next 5 years. And so you could put that into a strategic plan and then use that document to update your development plan so that all those projects are listed at one time, and then you don't have to keep revising the development plan. Does that make sense?
It does. It's a lot of information. I'm glad this is recorded because I'm understanding some of it and some of it I'm not. I do know that we are working on our master plan. I do know that was the Carlisle and Wortman Associates that Daryl's been working with. So I guess at this point, got to understand how that all correlates with what we're doing.
Right. How far along are they on that?
I think he's done and getting ready to present to the village council. And if that's inaccurate, I apologize. I've been at a few planning commission meetings. And I know they were stuck on a couple of topics to help improve processes in Stockbridge in terms of required site plans and stuff like that.
Okay.
But this is the company that Daryl had said that they're good. They just take a long time to help. But yeah, I think I'm getting it in that. And I'm also recognizing on your spreadsheet here that this is the process. So you've got this in order of what we need to do. And there's so much to do that having this, just taking it one bite at a time here is going to be a long haul altogether.
Sure. So what I would suggest that we do to start out with is go back to the start, which is deciding the scope of work, or defining more the scope of work. And I know you've mentioned some, overall generalities, like we'd like to do sidewalks. Well, when I'm saying define that, I'm like, well, what kind of sidewalk do you want? Do you want just a replacement? Do you want all the sidewalks replaced? Do you want only deteriorated sidewalks to be done? So we need to define that scope better. And besides that, it's like, do we want to do lighting? Do you want to do site furnishings? Do you want to do planters? Do you want to do flowers in the planters? That's the type of detail that I'd like to get at. And so that's really your first step. And yes, I think it would require either more time with you and I, or more time with, some committee time where we can, prioritize and say, hey, here's our wish list, of these 15 things, but let's then prioritize them, so that if we are conscious of costs and how much funding you have to work with, we're not proposing anything that's going to be beyond the capabilities.
Right. And Melissa had a wonderful idea. When I was on vacation, she had texted last week, why don't we go out and take some pictures downtown of what we want to do? And that falls into the line of define the scope of work, the sidewalks, planters, lighting. So I think our design committee's got our head wrapped around at least that initial step on identifying exactly, which is also going to lead into how understanding what kind of investment that we're going to have to make ultimately with it.
Right.
But I do want to go back, and I want to make sure that I understood what you were saying. So the urban planning firm, so is that what Daryl then has in place with the planning commission if they were helping them with the master plan? Is that who Carl and Workman is? Do you know?
I don't, you sent me the name of the person that he's been working with, and that name is not familiar to me.
Okay.
But yeah, Carlisle Workman is a firm that has urban planners who work there. Sometimes these planning firms will have civil engineers on staff or landscape architects on staff. Sometimes they have partnerships with other organizations.
Okay.
So like, for work, I was working on a project that we had the urban planning firm giving us advice, but they worked with the landscape designer, and they worked with the civil engineer as well. So some firms are more comprehensive, and then some are more a la carte. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
Okay.
And I don't know too much about Carlisle Workman. I've not worked with them before. I went on their website and I recognized a few names. So I have encountered them. Now they will probably have some familiarity with the community now because they've done your master plan, but I don't know if they have, civil engineers and LAs on staff or not. As opposed to the planning. So the planning is more like how to plan for growth and where what the buildings are, the style of the downtown and all of that kind of stuff, where your civil engineer is going to be more about the detail of how something is going to be designed and built. And your landscape architect is going to be more about, just like that, what the surfaces look like, what colors you're going to use, what plant selections you're going to make, what's your irrigation system going to be, those types of things. So some firms have all that and others do not, which is why I think when we go through and better define a scope of work, you can say,
right,
we need that firm that has all these comprehensive services so that we can make sure that our project is unified, or can we just secure a civil engineer who's going to do some sidewalk drawings for us. I mean, that I don't think you can make that determination now. But yeah, your urban planning firm is more big picture, like how do you want your downtown to be in X number of years, and what's it going to take to get you there.
Okay, got it. And so just so I don't fail to mention a couple of things I wrote notes on. So when we initially talked prior to setting up this meeting, I know I was looking for 3 to 4 ideas on how to go about this. I know I had wrote down urban planner. I had wrote down the idea of, you had mentioned possibly a school project of adopt a town. Who does that? And then the idea of if there's interns or someone that can help us at the colleges. Was that something we were going to address today? Was that on your list?
No, but I can look into that because that might be something that chances are you're not going to have that kind of organization do a streetscape. They might be able to help with some higher level stuff, but they're not going to do a set of construction specifications for you.
Okay, so we're still on the entry level stuff where maybe down the road we revisit that. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yeah, well, if you wanted to have a group come out and do like, oh, I'm trying to think of more specifically. Sometimes they'll do specific projects, like if we want to do, here's an example. Eastern Michigan University has a program in historic preservation. And so sometimes they may have like a student project do your reconnaissance level historic survey. So that is where some opportunities lie to do that. So sometimes you have urban planning and they may pick like, here's a building in town. Or an architecture school, you know, give you here's a picture of a building in town, tell us, or a piece of land in town, and you want them to design, you know, as a special project to come up with some conceptual ideas of what you could do with that building, or what you could do with that space. Or if you had public space that you wanted to turn into a park, could you have some, you know, fledgling landscape architects come out and put together some ideas for you to you know, put together that park. So those are some things that you could do, but I don't think you would find somebody to, as a special project like this, to work on you know, a bidding project for some streetscaping kind of things. It's a little bit more detailed.
Okay, well, we're open to any help that we can get. And the whole idea of entertaining those options, we really need your help with that piece. I don't have the connections, the time, or the insight to understand enough to facilitate any of that. So if that is something as our consultant that you can still help us try to proceed with, maybe investing some time to see if there's anything out there that can benefit Stockbridge, I'd still like to explore that.
Sure.
I'm getting an idea of what your work plan is looking like and where we need to start. I definitely want to revisit the idea of not doing so many plan amendments and fine tuning that. So I addressed the what. We talked about the urban planning firm and what would be the value of that, but that's big projects. I've still got on here how do I as the new chair try to help facilitate combining these, not having so many small amendments in the future. I just need to know how to actually put that in place. So if the attorneys are involved, but only for the legal language, and we have you as a consultant, and ultimately urban planning firms do this, I'm still not understanding what do I do to help to change this behavior that we have, which is all these small amendments. So do you have any advice on how do I do that?
Yeah, so I think what would help there again is if you did some advance, and even if you decide not to do a strategic plan, but just did a 2-year work plan.
Okay.
So a 2-year work plan, I mean, this is called a work plan, right? So
yes,
but this is the type of work plan I'm doing here is one that outlines the phases of a project and then defines all the steps needed to take that to complete that project. But you could also do just a basic 2-year project work plan to say, you know, here's the priorities of the board right now in order to, and we want to focus on the cleanliness and attractiveness of the downtown. And in that, we're going to do these 3 projects. We're going to do streetscapes, we're going to replace the banners, and we're going to install flower pots. We also want to focus on improving buildings, and so therefore we want to concentrate some resources on implementing a facade program, and then doing a signage, you know, a wayfinding signage thing.
Yes.
And then we're going to work on business development. And in that business development, we'd like to buy a building and create a business incubator out of it.
Okay,
Right.
let me stop you there, Annette. So this is perfect. So you're actually wrapping your head around some of the long-term goals that we have that would be a beautiful 2-year project for Stockbridge. I guess what I'm asking is, who can help us achieve writing up this 2-year work plan? It's not going to be me. So
oh, great. Yeah. You need
who's gonna do
somebody.
this?
Well, I've done it in the past with other with the boards that I work for. So every year we do a 1-year plan. If you wanted to do a strategic plan, it's a little bit more comprehensive. You get more input from the community if you want it, probably similar to what they did with the master plan. So I don't necessarily know if all those steps are necessary, but if you want a facilitator to come in and do all of that, there are people out there who do that. Again, it costs. So,
Yeah.
I mean, I could take a stab at it. We could basically just outline, we could outline some, I guess I want to call them like main priorities. So,
Yes.
so what I would probably do is start you guys out with doing some broad, I don't necessarily want to call it visioning, but just say, you know, we could do some questionnaires during a meeting on some big whiteboard, you know, big 3M sheets or something like that, or, you know, a whiteboard or through this format, and just say, all right, what are the bigger issues facing the downtown? What is included in the master plan, in your master plan for improving the downtown? What does the board out of all of those things feel is a priority? What would you guys like to accomplish over the next 3 years? And then, you know, write it all down. You could, it doesn't have to be really complicated, but you could say, you know, in these areas, we want to work on these, you know, 3 projects or 5 projects, and then assign some kind of value to them. So we'll pick on banners. You know, we have room for 50 banners because we have 50 lampposts, and each banner is $100. We know it's $5,000 that's going to be set aside for banners.
Okay.
And then that way it's all in this planning document that you can then use again to start checking the boxes. So it's basically a project list. So
yes.
You can get it to be as complicated or as easy as you want it.
So it's a couple things to interject. Is this one of the benefits and value of Main Street America? This is following the same lines. And then is this what a DDA director normally does?
So yes, Main Street, if you are a participant in that, Main Street can assist with that. They help you with some strategic planning. Now, keep in mind, Main Street is, they have their own processes, I guess is maybe the best word for how they want you to accomplish things. So
okay.
Lately, Main Street has been using community transformation strategies. I think you
yes.
probably recall that from the training.
Right.
So a community transformation strategy will help you focus on certain positioning the community a certain way, and then everything that you do supports that positioning.
Right.
So easy to use Ann Arbor as an example. Ann Arbor is a university town and very technologically savvy. So if Ann Arbor were a participant in the Main Street program, they would probably, I'm not saying they are because they're not, as far as I know, they're not, but the you know, Main Street might suggest to them, you need to focus on how to best position your community for university students and those people who want to be living in a university town where there's access to education and access to culture and all of those things. And in doing that, you're going to want to have events that engage the students and or the older population, the empty nesters that want to locate near college towns.
Okay.
Another example of that might be water. So a city is a waterfront community where it's outdoorsy. So we want to focus all of our efforts on improving recreation, access to the water, making the beach better, whatever. So that's what they're looking at, is picking out a specific, honing in on a specific genre of person or type of community, and then using that to leverage resources so that you are positioning this community to be something that would appeal to that type of population. Does that make sense?
It does. It's a lot, but it totally makes sense. And as you're talking, I'm trying to envision what that looks like for Stockbridge. If we're going to participate in the Main Street America program, then we want to tie all this in together. And then I'm seeing how the 2-year work plan ties into it. And then us defining who we are as Stockbridge and what we want to do. Obviously, we're a big trail community. And so, and I have some emails from you from a while back that I revisited in terms of some really cool ideas about the bridge. And so don't think I forgot any of that stuff. I'm just now able to tap back into some of those creative ideas that relate to what you're telling me now.
Sure.
So
and related back to your question though, is this something that if you had an employee, part-time or full-time employee?
Yes.
So you that person could serve in those capacities. I think it depends upon the skill set of the person you would be hiring in that kind of job.
Okay.
So some communities hire DDA directors and then give them so much detail kind of work, admin work, that they're really just coordinators. They're really not directing.
Right.
And that's fine if that's what you want to focus their time and attention on.
It's not my goal. As the chair, I can say that my goal is to make progress, and I don't see that a value of a director's time. I want the director to direct us, and ultimately hiring someone with a skill set to be able to do that would be key. I believe from what Daryl and I have had conversations, he enjoys the clerical pieces of this position, and he intends to continue to do them to support us. If he leaves in that capacity, then we're going to have to find someone else to do it. But we don't need a director, behind the scenes doing clerical stuff. So I hope that's the same thought pattern you had. But yeah, I'd like to see us move in that direction as far as the director. And hopefully that still ties into the Main Street America. And then I just want to go back to this question of who's going to do this 2-year work plan project, whether it be an urban development. Obviously, the legal piece, we already have an attorney in the plan to look at the legal stuff. But can it be you, or do we have to hire somebody else to do it?
No, like I said, I could do that. I've done it before. In other, just my regular doing your regular, regular course of work. I don't know if it would be helpful to do this on Zoom. My philosophy on Zoom is it's great for updates, or usually you have 1 or 2 people who really feel like commentary on Zoom, and then you have those who are a little bit more, would like to be more engaged when they're in person. Some people just don't engage well on Zoom. So in order to do something like that, you probably need, it's not anything that can be done in a, in a board meeting setting either. You'd probably want to have a special work session
Yes.
to do it rather than make it dominate a portion of a board meeting. So, I would be happy to, I need to be prepared for it. So we probably need, you and I have to set up a meeting to outline how the meeting would flow, what the questions would be, how we're going to invite people to interact, that type of stuff. And I'd rather do that in person, which means we'd have to get a date on a schedule outside of a board meeting. So there would be the challenge because, you probably want to do a 2-hour block of time. And I don't know what people's availability, on a Friday afternoon might look, or a Friday morning. But I'd really like to do this outside of a board meeting setting, people sitting around tables and feeling a little bit more relaxed than having, it still has to be posted as a meeting. You post it as a work session, but it would be the only thing on the agenda. It's kind of like a special meeting. You take roll and then you go right into this process. And then when it's done, we could also, put a laptop up on a screen and share a document and fill it out as we go, right? So
on the meeting on the 11th, I'm going to ask the board when they would like to do that, and I'll explain to them what you just mentioned, and we'll get it on the calendar. But we're going to need to know what I guess getting your availability first might make more sense, and providing them options.
Yeah. So, like I said, Fridays generally are the best for me.
Okay.
Because Monday through Thursday, I'm at my other job.
Okay.
If we're looking at Fridays, well, that's Labor Day weekend, but I'm not planning to go anywhere. So I could do September 3rd. I could do September 17th.
I was like in September 3rd as well. Why don't we shoot to see how many people we can get to show up on Friday, September 3rd?
Yeah. And if you want to take advantage of, because I'm going to have to obviously drive out there, if you wanted to take advantage of me being in town to also have a meeting with your design committee to kind of walk around town and do that recon.
Yes.
Maybe we could do that at the same time and, define the scope of work. So we get back to this, getting really concise on what you want to do and then prioritizing it. So that way I can kind of fill the rest of this out and we can start looking for the right kind of professional help that you might need.
Okay. Yeah, Labor Day weekend. Okay, I was just trying to figure out when Labor Day was. I got it. So I'm leaving with some goals here, which is possibly setting up the meeting for Friday the 3rd. We can do the recon with the design committee. We talked about using you potentially for a 2-year work plan so we can start to minimize how many amendments that we're doing. You know about pump tracks, and I think pump tracks fit right along into this. We would obviously want to add that to the 2-year work plan, along with the Stockbridge streetscape. And then we talked about, so are you, and I guess I'm still not clear on that, as far as the actual going out and asking colleges about adopt a town project. Are we putting that on the back burner now because we're not quite there, or is that something that you could dedicate some time to help us facilitate to see if EMU, if there's a project that we want to do, or adopt a town project?
Yeah, no, I don't think we need to put it on a back burner. I just think we need to understand better what kind of projects are out there so that we can target the right school for the right job.
Okay. And
So
the only reason that that one's on my heart and mind so much is because of timing. Because if you don't, we might even be behind the 8 ball. This might be for 2022 in terms of the school year, or however they manage their college time. I just know that school's getting ready to start, so that's why I kept pushing for that. But it might, we might just, yeah.
Yeah, you might, like I said, I think if we, I actually think if you did that, and don't feel like your work plan only has to be a 2-year work plan. You can get, I mean, I think to start out with, it might be an easy, I don't want to necessarily use the word sell, but I think to get people thinking more forwardly, the 2-year might be good, but some places do 5-year strategic plans. So just be aware of that. I think going 2 years into it, but
Okay.
when we get that done,
Yeah.
that should be the place where if you had an appropriate project to do a community work, that's where I think it's going to get.
Okay.
That's where you're going to get it pulled from.
Okay.
And then, I think you may have asked about, the scope of services that Main Street would provide. And they're not going to tell you what your work plan should be, but they're also going to help facilitate that as well. So
good.
We do a 2-year plan and then you decide you want to participate in Main Street. I mean, you don't really get the services until you're, until you're a participant in the community and you put your application in and you're accepted. So that's at that point. So since we're still doing some getting to know you kind of things, I wouldn't say don't move forward with the strategic or with this, 2-year work plan, because if you choose to participate in Main Street, great, because by the time we're done executing a 2-year plan, you're probably starting to get services from Michigan Main Street.
Okay.
If you choose not to engage in Main Street after going through this training and getting to know the program more and what it requires, then you've not had a strategic, then you haven't had a work plan for 2 years, right? You haven't had your project list. So there's a benefit to you to do it regardless.
Okay. No, so all these things tie together. That's the wonderful thing. And then getting everybody on the board as a team so we can become a board of doers and working together. That'll be key in facilitating all of this. Yeah. So this is a lot, and I'm going to review it. I'll listen to the recording again. I'll share this with the design committee. Anything else?
I feel like I overwhelm you every time.
Well, it is overwhelming, and which is why I really like to push for a DDA director. And as much as I'd love to facilitate all of this myself, I don't have the capability or the talent, or the time. So I just keep hoping that we can keep bringing resources and great projects and people wanting to help and get things done. So it's all that being said, everything that you mentioned is where my heart and mind is in terms of wanting to help this community. So there we go. I don't think I have anything else. And I was just looking through our notes from our previous meeting. So I got my homework here.
Okay. Well, let me know about the 3rd when you can. You said you have a meeting coming up on the 11th?
Yes.
12th?
Yep.
Okay. Yeah, just confirm that with me so I can just set it aside on my calendar, and we'll plan on, if we can, 2 hours for that meeting and maybe another hour after that for your subcommittee for design. To work on that scope of work. And then once that's decided, I think you're going to see that we'll be able to move on some of these things a little bit quicker than others.
Okay.
But yeah, if we can lock that date in, because we're also trying to plan some time away. So my alternate date for you, if that date doesn't work,
yes,
would be the 17th.
Okay. Awesome.
Yeah.
And then let me tie one more thing together here. So the benefit and value of getting together on a workshop on September 3rd is now I've established that we're trying to fine tune our amendment process we're also, by doing that, we need these 2 to 5 year project work plan to identify what we're trying to do. And to help know that better, we should get together with the 3M whiteboards, make sure that we're including everyone in terms of what are our goals, what do we want to get accomplished. Is that a good tie-in?
Yeah, and if you can get your hands on a draft of that master plan,
Yes.
so that way we can pull out the tactics that they included on how to improve the downtown. I'd be interested in seeing that.
Okay, as now I'm going to look at it with a whole different set of eyes. So this is very cool. So improve downtown master plan. I will get that for us. Okay, awesome.
All right, well, I will wait word for you. And then in the meantime, since this seems to be something that is understandable as I, think of different steps to take, again, it's going to be hard to fill out everything until we get back to exactly what the project is going to entail.
Yes.
But I'll keep working on this. And then the other thing is when we decide on the date, if the board is up to doing this, project plan,
Yes.
advanced plan, we should probably just set aside an hour to flesh out how that meeting process will flow.
Okay, I'm down for that. I got it.
Okay.
Yep.
All right. Well, I'll wait to hear from you then.
All right, Annette, thank you so much.
All right. Take care.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye-bye.